Can't cry before I start. That's not fair. If you went to any of the 4 masses that I celebrated this weekend, you would have heard me share about a program that I'm in that's helping me receive more education/formation in becoming a spiritual director. So for those who don't know, a spiritual director from the Catholic perspective is somebody who helps someone else in their relationship with God in some way through a one-on-one conversation. And any good spiritual director should always keep in mind two things, that in that one-on-one conversation, there's always a third. Right? God himself is always present there. And that points to the other thing that every spiritual director should remember. The primary spiritual director is God himself. Right? So you don't need a human spiritual director, but it can be helpful. I've had one for 10 years, and both of them have been priests. The first one was in seminary. They have a list of priests that you can ask in seminary. And right before we're about to be ordained, they say, think of somebody else, because we need to reserve those priests for the seminarians. So I've had another priest since being ordained a priest, and he's been a great gift to me in many, many ways. So he actually did the same program that I'm in. The program that I'm in, part of that program is an 8-day silent retreat each year around October. And I have one more of these next October. I just finished one a little over a month ago, this October. And the first one I ever went on last October, convinced me, right, these 8 days of silence, convinced me that even when I'm done with this program, I need an 8-day silent retreat every year for the rest of my life. Right? Every year. I was convinced. And that's how much of an impact that first retreat had on me. So I want to share a little bit about why it had such an impact on me. And it's connected to one of the themes, one of the readings in a particular way for our Solemnity today. So just to set the scene a little bit, I shared a little bit about this in my homilies this past weekend. But the place that I go to for this formation, to learn how to be a better spiritual director, is for this retreat as well, is a seminary about an hour outside of Chicago. And this seminary is just incredibly beautiful. It has this incredibly beautiful lake on their campus, and all around the lake is this 3-mile loop that's great for walking, great for jogging. And about halfway around the loop, they have this beautiful perpetual adoration chapel, which is more like a small church. And it's a great place to adore the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament, like all perpetual adoration chapels are. And it's also a great place about halfway around the lake to use the restroom if you need it, and to warm up a bit when it's cold outside as you make your way around the lake. So during this 8-day silent retreat, what I have been doing the past 2 years is basically, most of the time, I walk around this lake. I do that about 3 or 4 times each day. Helps to pass the time. And it's between 9 and 12 miles each day. And I just take in the beautiful scenery that's all around me, and I talk to the Lord. I pray. And I give God full permission to interrupt my wandering thoughts. Well, my first year doing this retreat, last October, God was interrupting my thoughts quite often. And he was doing that in really beautiful ways. And what he was doing in those interruptions was he was just helping me receive his love in like really beautiful, new, deeply profound ways. And it was helping me grow in my love for him. Like he increased my love for him. And at the same time, I had only been here for 3 months during that first retreat. He was increasing my love for all of you. Like I could not wait to get back to come love you with the love that was being poured out upon me. And it was incredible. It was such an incredible experience. And I just remember being very aware of God's presence with me. And I deeply desired, even as much as I desired to come back, I also really desired to stay in that space where I could just experience God's presence in the way that I was forever. It was amazing. It was amazing. That's why I was convinced that I needed to do this every year for the rest of my life. And it was so powerful. It was so real for me that at some point I remember thinking about our first parents, Adam and Eve. And you might be like, how did you get to that place? Well, around this lake, there are just enough trees for a city boy to feel like he's in the woods, right? So in reality, there's no more trees than like maybe from here to Eaton Street. But for me, I felt like I was in the woods, and that led me to imagine at some point, what was it like in the Garden of Eden? Right? So the woods being in a garden, all this was kind of connected in my mind. And I remember asking God in prayer, like connected to all this, like just feeling his closeness and feeling like every time I threw up a prayer, it was being answered. I could hear the Lord's voice so clearly, so powerfully during that time. I remember asking him, like, was this what it was like for Adam and Eve? Like, did they experience your closeness like I am? Did they hear your voice as clearly as I feel like I'm hearing your voice? And what was wild, when I asked that question, almost immediately, what I heard in my heart was, it was better. It was better. So this isn't church teaching, right? This is Father Michael's private prayer. But at the same time, my response to it was better was like, wow. Wow. Better than this. Better than what I'm experiencing. Like what I was experiencing, I never wanted to end. And it was better for them. In some way, I believe that is true. And my next thought was, well, then how could they have turned away from you? How could they have turned away from you? And then I remembered what we just read in that first reading, that they are not the only ones in this garden. There's someone else, depicted in today's reading as the serpent, who we believe is the devil, who we do not need to fear, but we should be aware of his presence and his tactics. He is persistent in trying to draw us away from God. Whereas God, his persistence can be seen as in drawing us back to him. It's the easy way to think about how the devil might try to influence us away from the Lord, and what the Lord is doing, drawing us to himself. Right, the key is to focus on those things, those people that lead us back to God. Those things that help us listen to his voice. The scriptures, staying connected to his voice, spoken through the scriptures. His voice is the one that always calls us back to him, to Jesus. That's what Mary does. Right? That's what Mary does. She always calls us back to her Son. Today's solemnity is about her and the fact that we believe that she was conceived immaculately, right, without sin. That she was given this special grace that kept her free from sin her entire life. And we believe that because of what Jesus came to do. He came to free us from our sins. And because he's God, he exists outside of time, he was able to apply the grace that he would merit through his passion, through his death. He was able to apply the merits of those actions to his mother while she was being conceived in her mother's womb. In St. Anne's womb. He preserved her from the stain of original sin from the moment of her conception. This is a gift that only God can give. The gift of making his mother unique among women after the fall. So she was created like our first parents were before they chose to disobey God, because they were created without sin as well. The big difference is Mary gets the fullness of grace that helps her to stay free from sin. And what's incredible about that, what's incredible about today, the solemnity that we celebrate, is that it's a reminder of a couple things. Right? Number one, God is trying to help remind us that he has the power to do what he did for his mom, our Mother Mary. He has the power to do that for us. So this is something we can be excited about, right, for the entirety of our lives. This is what I was one of the things I was highlighting in my homilies this weekend, that at some point, we're going to be very similar to Mary. We will no longer desire to sin. Sin will no longer be a threat in our lives. It will no longer be a threat to our relationship with God. He will have filled us with His love, with His grace to such an extent that it won't be an option. Like, we will not want to choose against Him because of the goodness that we are convinced that He has for us for all eternity. And the goodness is Him. Right? It is Him, the gift of Himself, being poured out in abundance forever. The second thing that today's solemnity made me think of is the dignity that all of us share. Because whenever we think about our Mother Mary, Jesus' mother, we should be reminded that the Lord proves to us that we have equal dignity through her in a very powerful way. He chose to become man. He chose to become man through a woman. He didn't have to do that. He could have just showed up, right? He's God. He can do stuff like that. But He chose to come to us, to become a man through a woman. Through that very act, He proves that we are equal in dignity. He lifts our humanity, our maleness, our femaleness. He lifts both of us up in that very act. How incredible is it that we can say a woman gave birth to God? No man can claim that. There is only one woman who can claim that. Her name is Mary. She's our mother. She's His mother. She's the mother of God. Jesus is God. All of her feast days are a reminder that we can look to her as a model. That we can look to her and ask her for her prayers to be like her. To never stop saying yes to her Son. To continue to do whatever He tells us to do.